Hot off the press, bucking the trend. Anyway, this week's news, topics, what I get the latest insights of what I've seen on the internet world, as well as my local industry news and other subjects. Got a couple of gold nuggets here and some tech tips at the end after this.
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with a guy. This is As the Wheel Turns, So Do Days of Our Rides series. I will be covering topics of the industry as well as consumer views with my 30 years experience.
If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Well, hello, welcome back to the latest installment of As the Wheel Turns, So Do the Days of Our Rides. Tips and tricks at the end, back of the bus. But before that, I want to do the hit industry top news. What I've seen that kind of triggers my intrigue, and also my insights of those, or if I have insights of those, I'll bring them up to light, because there's a lot of news stories out there where, I ain't gonna touch that. And there's some like, I can give some 30 years experience knowledge of what I've experienced. Experiences, right? Well, anyway, top one. Brain, bicycle retail industry, Brain magazine, actually some of the magazines on their online, is Gary Fisher is on the e-bike bandwagon. Well, reading this article, I was like, he paired up with a guy and he's gonna do e-bikes and that kind of thing. I'm going, wait, what? I thought it was with Trek, right? Apparently he left Trek a year ago. I didn't know that. Well, it probably was an article somewhere and I missed it, that kind of thing. We were all really busy. Let's just put it that way. During mid-season, we don't read these things in detail. We're just doing this stuff, working on bikes. Can't get our head out of it. So, what was interesting, he left Trek. He's been with Trek for a long time. This is what I'm going to touch just a little bit on the history piece. Trek acquired Gary Fisher in the 90s, and that was actually a power play for Trek to be able to utilize different brands and different shops in the same market. So Parker Bikes, my parents' shop, we carry Trek, but our neighbor or competition, Destination Cyclery, which they're no longer in Dunn too, they carry Specialized, but they picked up Gary Fisher, and they also picked up Le Mans, which is a Trek brand as well. We had the Klein and the Bontrager, so Trek was pulling money out of both little stores. So that was their initial kind of big plan, where they bought up all these brands, they had separate reps and all this, and it's shakedown over the years. But Gary Fisher was one of them, back to him. And when they did the shakedown and paring down all different brands, Bontrager was the parts branding which they needed, because they played with, prior to Bontrager, they had Icon marketing, Icon parts, and before that Matrix, and it didn't work. But when they got Bontrager and put a name to it, that actually did well. Well, they did well with Gary Fisher too. Gary Fisher is the grandfather of mountain bikes. I mean, he is the grandfather of mountain bikes up there with Richie. And they did their thing in California playing with the cruisers. I'm sure you can find a whole bunch of videos about that. Him going crazy back then, still a crazy cat today. I met him once in person in 2007 or 2008 at a Trek Concept store opening with a store I was working at, Lee Cyclery in Loveland, Colorado. And he's an interesting cat. Let's just put it that way. Sometimes you don't want to meet the people that you really look up to, because he turned out and it's kind of a letdown. Kind of felt that way a little bit. Nothing to get him in the personal aspect. He has done a lot to the industry. I can't give him more notable mentions of that. As a person, I don't know, whatever. Not my cup of tea, which is fine. But the reason why I want to bring this up is he's left Trek, which was a big thing for him. But I could see it coming, because you see him at these events, and his one saying that he has, like, well, where's all the Gary Fisher bikes at this Trek opening? I'm like, well, you're basically, over the last decade, just the guy that Trek could dust off and push out to certain events, like grand opening stores and whatever. I can see how, for him, his perspective is like, okay, this is crap. So he eventually got underneath a Trek umbrella. Now he's doing this e-bike thing, which had some pretty interesting article bits of providing e-bikes as like maybe a leasing type thing, and also an avenue for people of getting the e-bikes for commuting and so forth, which is great. That's awesome. Good for him. So yeah, I wanted to bring that to attention. A little bit of history about Gary Fisher. He's a wackadoodle kind of guy. I mean, you kind of have to like him, even though he may not believe whatever he's doing personally, whatever. But anyway, neither here nor there. The second topic I want to go over is the Pros Closet CEO steps down. And he has been with the company, Pros Closet, for a couple decades, from the beginning, I believe, in 2002 when they just started doing the eBay thing. And the reason why I bring this up is like, okay, Pros Closet has been in the news lately and layoffs and so forth, and they had a big chunk of investment a couple years back, and they're probably kind of feeling the pain and, opening up the stores to the public, which was probably not an original plan, but it was like their blow-off valve, we need to do this kind of thing. And he stepped down in a sense, like, I'm kind of done. Like, I need to spend time with family. He's a little bit younger than me, it looks like. Not much, but he has family. I have a 7-year-old. I get it. You want to spend time with family, and if you're in a position to do that, do it. And some of these heartaches and challenges that are going to have to face in the next 3 to 5 years, which a lot of us bike shop people have been around along, like me, for 30 years. We had high and lows. Once you hit that low again after a major high, it's after a few times, you're like, okay, I know this is a big dig. I'm going to have to dig this out. Which, in turn, a lot of shops right now that are a Trek or Specialized and they're bigger dealers that want to sell out because they're just done. That's where you get in the Trek expansion, corporate stores, and the Specialized corporate stores, and Pawn, as well as another kind of contributor to that, which is part of the lamb steak. And back to the Pros Closet CEO stepping down. This new guy has been with the company for a couple of years, is coming up the ranks, which, good for him. He's, maybe some new blood, maybe do some new, perspectives, try to bring the branding up, because I'm afraid for him. I mean, it's one of those things where I've seen a lot of companies get too big and they crash. And then when then there's like a mad scramble. And the reason why I know this, we were a Schwinn dealer before Schwinn crashed by Eddie Schwinn. It was original Schwinn family owned it before they went down. We were a Schwinn dealer in the 90s. Mongoose did the same thing. Gary Fisher did the same thing, ran out of money, Trek bought him. Gary Klein ran out of money, desperate, got bought. Le Mans, leased the name. It's like one of those things where in Pros Closet, I don't think there was a bailout after this. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of like selling blue sky. I mean, it's in the bike industry, you may have it, you may not, but who knows. But hopefully, I hope the best for this new guy, and hope he does really great with it. It's a great concept. I have nothing against Pros Closet at all, in a sense. I mean, yeah, their prices have kind of gone up high, but that still provides opportunity to guys like me to come in the market, and like we work well together. So, anywho. So those are the two highs, the high gears, going to the downshift to the low gear. Women's tour in Great Britain got canceled. It's a 5-day tour for pro race women. This sucks, and it's also an indication of the state we're in. A reason I bring this up is it's probably going to affect a lot of different race circuits, and this has also affected racers in their actual sponsorships, because like Specialized has cut all those people out. Like, nope, anybody who's like influencer or anything like that, they just cut that whole chain out because they just can't afford it, because they have different moves they're going to do. Which there's an article in here about Specialized, which I haven't read yet, but it's some answers to good questions, and I'll cover that next week. But anywho, it's like the thing that it's telltale signs of our industry is kind of struggling. Good note is, though, it doesn't affect the Tour de France La Femme, which is awesome, because I really was excited to see this gender embracement, because like last year the first Paris-Roubaix, or recently the first women's Paris-Roubaix, it was awesome. I mean, it was fun to watch these things and get insight, and it also gets televised. Thank you for Peacock for posting those things up so people can actually watch those things. So the problem is, though, what we're facing is there's going to be a pinch and sponsorships come up short and they don't have enough money to spread, and everybody's a little bit nervous right now globally. So it's one of those things that you're going to see more of that, unfortunately. But shifting back into the high gear, time is going to build carbon bikes in the U.S. Manufacturing coming back to the U.S. Okay, I'm not super huge on that, but when you rely on other countries and it's a month and a half boat ride to get your product over here, then something's going to need to change. And them to be able to find a economical way to build frames in the United States and produce them in a higher quality. And Time is not Time is a big name, but it's not a big brand. In the sense that I'm saying, the brand doesn't have like Trek, 1,000 different bikes. It's like it's more fine-tuned. It's more of a niche bike line, that kind of thing. It's the higher end stuff, but at least it's a step towards that direction of building things in the United States and producing really cool stuff. And the time that, from concept to build to production to in stores is a shorter window too. So I'm sure they see that as a value prop for doing so. Following the suit of last fall in October, we heard Cannondale is going to do assembly in the United States, which they got. And these things, they don't happen overnight. It's like months and months to years in advance and planning and scratching their heads and figuring out where to do and dollars and cents and everything. So Cannondale putting bikes together back here, that's the same thing they can adjust quickly on the fly kind of thing. Investing in the Taiwan is great. I understand, and they're a country that we really support and so forth, but anything happens to them, we're in a lot of hurt, not just in the bike world, but a lot of others. So anyway, it's like you want to diversify as much as you can. So that's a huge thing. So anyway, those are the industry news, high-low gears. Okay, we're going into customer insights. Picked up Bicycle Magazine recently, and Bicycle Magazine has been around for years. I remember in Parker Bikes Day, we sold the Velo News, Bicycle Magazine, all that. And I'd read them because, they tear off, after the month's done, they tear off the covers and get an extra, get credit for what we don't sell and get the magazines to read in the back. And they've always had some good insights and so forth. But this one was very interesting and really kind of hit something to me with carbon frames. And the title is like repairing carbon frames. Is it something that you should be okay with to buy used? And the article is very interesting because it does talk about the pros closet, which they had a percentage. Let's see here, the percentage of their frames are been repaired. I'm not sure if they are repairing them or they're being repaired and they're actually purchasing afterwards being repaired, but there was a pretty significant percentage on that. And bikes don't have like a Carfax thing, so you got to rely on the person you sell on the bikes, and have an inspection. So that's where my value prop is. Like, I go through the frame in detail and make sure it's the best as it can be. And I've sold some bikes that have had some repairs on them, which are very small, which they look like they were done professionally. And it's like, what was it, 1,600 damaged or repair carbon frames were sold by the Pros Closet. The percentage related to sold, I can't find that right now. But anyway, that's a pretty significant number, and they feel confident with a guarantee that they're going to be good. So what really brings this article up front, and it makes me feel more warm and fuzzy about repair, because I know carbon can be repaired. And I know if it's done right, it's stronger than the rest of the frame part because they've taken that thin area which got damaged and actually beefed it up. Basically the same thing. If you break your arm and put a titanium plate in it, it's the strongest part, right? So I know, and there's a lot of, I'm not getting a lot of flack here because people are like, oh, carbon or whatever, but there's some scientific studies on carbon that it's very resilient, it doesn't break down, it's repairable, nor like aluminum, and once it cracks, it's done, and those kinds of things. Should you feel confident of buying a repaired carbon bike? Absolutely. to get your carbon bike that you've damaged repaired, you can get it done. It's a little pricey, but it can get done and done right. So there's a lot of all these newer popped up carbon repair people out there, which they do a really good job, and it's basically better than that frame just going into a landfill. So hey, reduce waste. If you get a better deal, sometimes the price is a little bit lower on the repaired. They're going to function the same for the most part. I know there's an outfit in England. They do high-end carbon repair. They will match the actual grade of carbon that was used from that manufacturer. They'll get the specs, rebuild the wall thickness to where it was, and repaint it so you'll not even know it ever was repaired in the first place. I mean, this stuff is amazing, but it's pricey. It's probably more expensive than the bike itself. Anyway, so talking about carbon repair. So as a consumer, it's okay to buy a bike that's been repaired. You just want to make sure it's been repaired professionally or somebody has been doing it for a while, or the repairs are very small, not like the whole chunk of it broken in half, that kind of thing. But I mean, little patches here and there, they're going to be fine, people. It's fine. It'll work out just great. And the last thing for consumer news, high gear. Today's the last day of TrekFest. What does that mean? They have some special percentages off. They had a $20 coupon that you can sign up for. I think it's $25. So you can just go in and spend $20 and that's what you get. There was no minimum to purchase on that, which is kind of cool. The bikes at first were not claimed to be as discounted as like people wanted to see. You're going to have naysayers on both sides. Like, yeah, this is great. Oh, this is not so great. Whatever. At least they're doing something to energize people getting into cycling. This is the time of year, figure out if you need some gloves or a new helmet or something to just get you back into the season, some new stuff. So last day is the 2nd of April. If you're seeing this on the 3rd, sorry you missed out, but there's going to be other sales, obviously. And what I've seen in the past, and don't quote me on this, this may or may not happen, but in the past they've done extensions. So depending on how well their sale was, it probably will need to be extended if it didn't do so hot. We're in a weird 2023, colder than average, just not in Colorado, but all the West Coast. We've had some weird weather. It's really messed up the season so far for a lot of people to start. So we're all hoping that April is going to be a little better for us, at least to kick off into spring and get those bike sales and industry stuff going there. So anywho, that's that. Tech tips. Tech tips. All right, I'm going to go over cable and housing just for derailleurs. I'm going to do that because when I'm refurbishing a bike, you basically, for a road bike, you'll have 2 main cables coming out of the shifters, and you have one that goes to the rear derailleur. So the reason why I'm covering this is if you have a bike and the cable's at the right length and you're switching these out, then you can just match these up. If you're going to, if you don't know, like I had one bike that didn't have cables and housing on at all. I just had to do it from scratch. I took a cable, the regular leftover cable or other cable I had, and I used this to kind of measure out the distances and make sure I had the bow of the cable so it doesn't bind up when you're moving the handlebars and that kind of thing. So you can just use that as a measuring tool or a string as well. But since I had this laying around, that was pretty easy to do. So, I mean, then you cut them and you can get kits. Mine is in a bulk box. So what you're gonna need is your old housing. Then you're gonna measure your new housing, line it up for lengthwise. And I usually like to go a little longer, personally, because that gives me maybe like a finger width longer. Just I need to retrim it or, that's holding. So you can either retrim it or it gives you a little extra. So if you do switch out the stems or whatever, that's part of it. Here's the gold nugget number 1. Okay, you cut well, first you want some good cutters. Second, once you get that cutters, you want to span out the entrance of where the cable is going to fit in there by using a poker. And you want to do that on both sides. so you know your cable is going to be flush on both sides. Also, this housing has it's pre-treated with a little bit of a grease, which is awesome. So here is my industry trick. So this housing is splined, so it goes like this, right? It needs to be capped. You just can't put that into the shifter or whatever. So you have to put on an end cap like this. So here's my trick. So I put on a scrap piece of cable, like the old cable that you're going to replace. You put the tidbit on there, and then you put it in the housing like that, so it goes in. But these needs to be pressed. So, and what I mean by that, it needs to be compressed down all over to the sleeve. And usually that happens when it's on the bike and you're shifting and trying to get to pre-stretch. Well, the cable's not stretching, it's the housing compressing down on its cable housing ends, ferrules as they're called. And tricky. Am I? Well. All right, so gotta get my focals here so I can see what I'm doing. So you take this in piece and goes over here. So you want to take, so the housing, so that's the shifter end, goes through here, and this is the trick. You take a cable puller, this tool here, and what it's doing is pressing this ferrule over on top of the housing. And that way you're pre-compressing your housing piece. So once it stops, this is good and ready to go. So that way, this has less likely to compress down while you're riding and get out of whack. So you repeat the process on the two, and the two front housing I try to match so they're the same, depending. Sometimes bikes will be different on like mountain bikes and so forth. Then you do the same for the one that goes to the rear derailleur. And this one has like the metal cap. So with those kits, you have different ferrules and so forth. This one you probably don't need a pre-press because it just slides over. But it's good to practice to have that just to make sure it's compressed all the way down in there. That kind of thing. That's the old one there. So tech tip for prepping housing to be installed for shifting. Always get some good housing. Spend a little extra money. It's not really too terribly expensive. You can get little kits to do just derailleurs, rotor mounting, that kind of thing. This will make your shifting night and day different, better. It's one of those things that I do on pretty much every bike that I refurbish because it brings that the shifting a lot more. And you don't know how they're compromised inside because the casing. But you got to think like if any water draws up in here, which it could possibly happen from either washing it or riding in the rain or whatever, or mountain biking in the mud, it'll draw contaminants inside here, and that'll prevent your shifting to be as efficient as possible. So that's the tech tips for this week. Have a wonderful day. Until next time, from the garage.